Hey guys, Tyler here. So often I get asked a lot of questions about my video making process. Where do I get my ideas? How long does it take to write a script from start to finish? What recording equipment do I use? What editing software do I use? Where do I get my footage?
FBI, open up!
Naturally, these kinds of questions have only gotten more frequent as my channel has gotten bigger. So today, okay, I have kind of a confession to make. I actually don't get these kinds of questions that often. You guys really just want to know who my favorite Star Trek captain is. Don't lie, it's Kirk. Anyway, the reason that I wanted to make this video is that I just wanted to demonstrate how much work actually goes into the production of one of my video essays. So without further ado, let's get started. So when I started uploading weekly in early 2021, I knew that committing to a schedule like that was a risky move. I mean, what if something comes up and I can't upload a new video every Friday? Eventually I started experimenting with uploading things like gaming compilations in lieu of regular essays, and yeah, that was controversial. What I realized is that you guys are actually more patient than I initially gave you credit for. My apologies. And would rather wait for a higher quality video essay than just have something show up in your sub box for me every week. Now, it's not out of laziness that I've chosen to, not force myself to upload 52 unique video essays in the span of a year. In fact, in the year preceding my Space Channel 5 Part 2 compilation, I actually didn't break my streak at all. And I uploaded 50 unique video essays in 2022, or 49. I uploaded enough, but without beating this poor dead horse to a pulp. That's kind of gruesome. All of this equivocation has made me realize that through no fault of your own, a lot of you guys in my audience just aren't really fully aware of what it takes to make one of these videos, and the true extent to which it is a full-time job, more so in a lot of ways than a traditional 9-to-5. I don't take weekends off, I don't have paid vacation, I don't have any health benefits, but enough of me complaining about our capitalist society. You're here to hear me talk about my video making process. So let's actually dive in. The question of how and where I obtain the ideas for my video topics is naturally a good place to start, in my opinion. Obviously, lots of my ideas begin as audience suggestions. That's honestly how a lot of my alien species videos came into existence, but it also applies to a lot of the videos that I've made about other Trek-related science topics. Transporters, warp drives, shields, replicators, holograms, and so on. But quite a few prominent ideas that I've greenlit and have done really well on my channel are ones that I came up with on my own. So it's always been about achieving a balance between what I think will do well in terms of views and revenue, what I think my audience will be interested in watching, and importantly, what I am interested in making. Sometimes I'll even sit on an idea for months or even years before I figure out exactly how I want to tackle it. Also, I've seen a few people comment things on my videos like, "Cool video, but Certifiably In-Game already covered this topic." And it's like, okay, good for Rick. I used to have this mindset that other Star Trek creators were my competition, and in some ways they are, but because of how YouTube recommendations work, the better their videos do, often the better mine do. So my goal is not to make a video that no one has made before, where no man has gone before, but to make a video that meets at the intersection of the three criteria that I just mentioned: potential success, audience interest, and personal investment. I feel like I'm trying to sell you guys a stock trading app. After I've landed on a video topic that I want to cover, say for example my video about the Trill, I spend hours doing research. While this process inevitably could be streamlined, just like other parts of my pipeline, essentially I go through the same routine for most of my Star Trek videos and most of my regular video essays in general. I like to go on various wiki sites like Memory Alpha, the wiki for canon Star Trek information. Memory Alpha isn't perfect, but it's very thoroughly sourced and has over 50,000 unique articles, and a community of editors who have kept the wiki alive for, at this point, almost 2 decades. When it comes to a species like the Trill, they are very thoroughly fleshed out in Deep Space Nine, so I've got a lot of reading to do, especially since I haven't seen a lot of the episodes I'm referencing in years. Sometimes I even go on Reddit to look up discussion on an episode or topic that I can't quite wrap my brain around. But I usually try to avoid Reddit at all costs. As you've probably noticed in my alien species videos, I usually try to summarize a given species' biological, cultural, historical, and sometimes even technological attributes, or at least the ones I find most interesting or noteworthy. But of course, if I stopped here, I'd feel like I wasn't doing my job right. One of the key things that defines my videos, in my view, is focusing on the plausibility of some of these aliens' features, like, say, the Trill spots that go all the way down.
All the way.
Now, I'm certainly not the first YouTuber who's ever done this. There's inevitably some overlap with other creators on the site. But having said that, if I'm not adding something to the conversation, again, I feel like I'm kind of doing a disservice to you guys. It's the reason that I spend half the runtime of my future tech videos talking about how some of these things like force fields could be achieved using real-world engineering techniques, or at least theoretical technology. I don't have a science degree. Damn it, Jim, I'm not a doctor, I'm an influencer. But science and technology are things that I've always been fascinated by. Anyway, I pull inspiration for a lot of my real-world scientific arguments from various sources, be them Wikipedia, different science documentaries like Melody Sheep's Life Beyond series, or even sites like SoulStation.com. Now we're to the writing stage. Isn't that exciting? Yeah, for a lot of people, writing can be one of the most challenging parts of the creative process. Lots of us are good at coming up with ideas. I mean, if you even have a halfway active imagination, there's lots of concepts that humans feel compelled to make art about, even if we don't have the resources or the skills to make those pieces of art come to life. In my case, while I've been into filmmaking since I was a child, it has taken me a very long time to acquire all of the necessary equipment and other resources to make my videos exactly the way that I want to make them. And I'm not even done. I may never be done. That's another part of growing creatively, constant incremental improvement. When it comes to writing, I often struggle with the same issues that lots of other people struggle with. How to phrase certain things, trying to make sure a script isn't too long, trying to make sure a script isn't too short, even finishing the script. That's genuinely a big deal, finishing something that you've started. I can't tell you how many scripts I've started and couldn't figure out how exactly I wanted to approach the topic. I try to avoid starting a script if I don't have at least a rough roadmap in my head of how I want it to go, but sometimes I have an idea that feels like it should work, but for whatever reason, I just can't get it to go anywhere, or at least its time hasn't come yet. As for the timetable involved, I usually like to see what I can write in a single day. I like to write on the weekends, hence why weekends aren't really weekends for me, since like my good friend Kinsey K Productions says,
I'm always working.
I may listen to music or otherwise isolate myself to get the creative juices flowing. By the way, I'll put my soundtrack recommendations in a pinned comment. I usually like to write scripts on my laptop, but sometimes I'll move over to my desktop. Just depends on my mood. If I can finish a draft in a day, great. I'll usually spend the next day or so refining it before I send it to one of my script editors, either Phobia or Subraxis, whose names you may recognize from the end credits in my videos. They'll usually offer some suggestions for revisions, which I often implement over the course of the following week. I've found that using Helvetica 12-point font in Microsoft Word or Google Docs is large enough for me to see with my special eyes.
My brand.
And zoomed into 170%, it usually works pretty well as an impromptu teleprompter. I might need to invest in a real one. That would make things go a lot faster. While some YouTubers will type a script in an even larger font to reach a near equivalence of 1 page per minute, my scripts usually tend to be about 3.5 minutes per page. Recording. Okay, so for me, this is where the video making process actually starts to get a little boring, believe it or not. That's right, research and writing are actually my favorite parts of making a video because that's usually where most of the learning happens. Of course, I still have to look up tutorials online every now and then to learn how to do some basic shit, in my editing software. But my second favorite part of the process is probably the filming aspect. So for most of my videos, you may have noticed that I tend to use what I and others call face cam. When I started making sci-fi video essays over 6 years ago, that's right, the Obama years, I'd record myself in front of a green screen, standing up, reading my script off the same kind of makeshift teleprompter that I use today. About 2 years into making these videos, I'd gotten enough comments about how my face is ugly that I decided to go behind the camera. I started doing voiceover narrations, and for a while, that style actually suited me better. My videos became more professional as I was forced to fill the runtime with relevant clips, which got me into video capturing. More on that later. But then, in late 2020, I was editing my 17-minute con video when I realized that I needed to start adding face cam back in just to finish the video on time. That's right, before I started uploading weekly, even then, I had self-imposed deadlines. I was using a Canon Rebel T6i with an 18 to 135mm Canon zoom lens at the time, and before that, I used a little old Sony camcorder. But in March 2021, I switched to a Sony Alpha 6600 with a Sigma 16mm prime lens. This is the same lens that my friend Andrew shot my documentaries Teched Out and Random Chance on. Later I switched to a Sony 15mm prime lens. That cost twice as much. But don't worry about that. For sound, I used a shitty Audio-Technica boom mic. Then for a while I used a lavalier set that plugged into the audio jack on my phone. Then in late 2020 I decided to go all out with a more expensive Sennheiser lav set with its own transmitters and receivers, which I still use to this day. While I used to use a Tascam audio recorder to capture my audio separately from my video, now I use one of these Sennheiser receivers which plugs right into my camera. This is called single system audio as opposed to double system audio, and it's much more convenient for editing. No need to sync up waveforms from different audio sources. For pickups, I'll occasionally use a Shure VB83 shotgun that mounts to my camera's hot shoe, or Rode NTG3 Plus shotgun microphone with a shock absorbing mount. For voiceover only narrations, like many of my Mass Effect, Metroid, and Star Wars videos, I use an Audio-Technica AT2020 cardioid condenser XLR mic with an articulating arm to absorb vibrations, and a pop filter to catch all those P's and B's. For streaming, God help me, that's a whole other animal, I use a Shure MV7 microphone attached via USB to my gaming PC. More on that in a minute as well. Sometimes I dress up in a costume of sorts like the leather jacket from my Mirror Universe videos, but I usually just wear a Trek t-shirt or one of the many wonderful shirts, jackets, or hoodies that you can get from the OrangeRiver merch store. Link in the description. In order to keep an eye on my mic level and make sure autofocus doesn't slip up, I connect my camera to my laptop with an HDMI cable plugged into an HDMI USB converter called a Razer Ripsaw X. Not a sponsor. While it may be more efficient to do face cam just for certain segments, I actually read the entire script out loud in one sitting, referencing the Word document or Google Doc on my laptop sentence by sentence. I do this because I never know when reading a line when I'm gonna have some kind of spontaneous reaction or, funny blooper. I never cut, which means I end up with very long, very large 4K 30 FPS video files. Sometimes I shoot a couple attempts at reading a whole script, but if a script takes like over an hour long to read, including mistakes and pauses, I usually just go with the first attempt. And I almost always do all of this by myself, though sometimes Phobia will help shoot a video for me. I pay him in spicy McChickens. And real money. Don't worry, I pay him in real money too. So yeah, as you can see, this is my recording studio. Sometimes I like to shoot stuff down by my computer, but I've gotten comfortable with shooting most stuff up here with this same background for consistency's sake. Well, I can record audio narration at pretty much any time of the day. I like to record face cam stuff at night because I don't have to worry about the light changing outside my window. I have two pseudophoto light panels behind my desk that light me as I record, and I can, hold on, focus. I can, put them on any RGB value or, any different kinds of settings for different situations. For my background, I've got my Star Trek shelf back here with all my books and knickknacks. Sometimes I like to cover this closet door with maps from Stellar Cartography, the Starfleet Reference Library, but sometimes I just leave it bare. And now the real fun begins, except not even quite yet. First, I have to import my footage from my SD card onto my computer and put it in the right folder. Then I open my editing software, DaVinci Resolve. I used to use Sony Vegas Pro, but its support for 4K is ass. Then I switched to Adobe Premiere when I was in college because that's what we were using, but the moment I graduated, I canceled the hell out of my subscription. After I started shooting more in 4K, DaVinci was the clear choice. Okay, this is starting to sound like a commercial, but I really like DaVinci. It's free and it has top-of-the-line color correction tools that are genuinely the best that I've ever used. Once DaVinci is open, I drag my footage into the program and then I optimize it. This makes unrendered 4K playback a little smoother, but it also creates giant cache files that I have to go find in File Explorer and manually delete every so often. The next full workday I have available, I usually edit what I call the audio cut. Basically taking all of my face cam or audio narration and trimming out all the mistakes and pauses to find the best takes of each sentence. Then I'll add the music, most of which is by the fantastic Sam Cugel. Please go sub to him, his work is amazing. This may seem like an odd order to do things in, like adding the music this early on, for instance, but for me, it just really sets the mood for the rest of the edit. Okay, now I'm ready to start the full edit, and oh my god, what about the Star Trek footage? So yeah, all the copyrighted clips of TV episodes and movies that you see in my video essays, they've got to come from somewhere. Everyone's method is different, and frankly, even discussing the subject in detail is kind of skirting the boundaries of what's considered legal. But in all seriousness, let me just say this. I own all of the DVDs and or Blu-rays of all the legacy Star Trek shows and films. And of course, there are plenty of clips that have been uploaded to YouTube. To put it into perspective, I'll tell you how I capture my gameplay footage, which is harder to copyright claim. I have a Razer Ripsaw, a different Ripsaw from the Ripsaw X, which connects to my Nintendo Switch through an HDMI cable and then to my computer through a USB cable, with another HDMI cable hooked up to one of my monitors. I won't go into extreme detail about my editing process, it's tedious, and it usually takes me between 2 to 4 days on top of what I just described just to put everything together. I will talk about my machine for a minute though. As many of you may know, last year I crowdfunded a high-end desktop PC. Before that, I was using what effectively amounts to an office computer with an NVIDIA GTX 1660 Super GPU attached to it. It had 16 gigs of RAM, a 4th generation Intel i7 CPU. It was severely lacking. But now I have a sexy new computer with a 12th gen i9 CPU, an RTX 3070 video card, 32 gigs of RAM, 8 terabytes of internal storage, the works. My editing workflow is so much faster now, and I have all of you guys to thank for it, so again, thank you so much. And also thanks to my members and patrons, I can afford a subscription to Storyblocks for all my stock footage needs. Not a sponsor. Once I have a rough cut of a video ready, I post it for top members and patrons to comment on before I render the final cut. Usually the night before a public release, I'll finalize things like titles and transitions, do the credits with my most up-to-date patrons and members list, render it, upload it to YouTube, and it's out to the world. Actually, but before that, I also have to do the title, tags, description, playlists, rating the video for advertiser friendliness, which is something I have to do now, placing ad breaks, cards, the end screen, all that stuff. And then I'm done. Just have to schedule the video to come out, sit back, relax, and watch it take off or fail miserably. So bottom line, most of my videos are technically produced at a loss. The main reason for this is, frankly, I just don't have enough subscribers yet. I feel like getting to at least 100K is when I'm gonna start to feel the real effects of success on this platform, but even then I'm still gonna be just scraping by. I'm not complaining. Okay, maybe I am complaining, but I feel I have a right to. But again, I wanted to make this video just to demonstrate how much work goes into the production of one of my videos. It's at least 40 hours a week, and so that's why with the support of my viewers, including the support of my members and patrons, everyone who donates super chats, everyone who buys merch, even everyone who clicks on the video, really does mean a lot. And even though I do complain quite a bit, I'm really fortunate to be in this field. Having full creative control over my work, being my own boss, setting my own hours, I really do value it. And at the end of the day, I'm here to entertain you guys. I can't lose sight of that. With that, thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a thumbs up down below and don't forget to share it. That stuff really helps me out. If you haven't subscribed yet, be sure to do that as well so you won't miss future uploads, and click the bell icon to receive all notifications. If you want to support my work even further, becoming a patron or a member is a great way to do so. Links to those, as well as my social media and merch store, are in the description. That's all I have for this week. Live long and prosper.